Welcome to the Point of No Return podcast, a show at the intersection of technology and strategy. On this show, we interview industry leaders and experts to better understand how they think about strategy during this time of exponential progress.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Point of No Return podcast. I bring to you today a special interview. It's one I've been trying to do for a few months. I was lucky to get Daniel Robichaud to accept to be on the podcast after incessant pestering. He was lucky enough to take time out of his busy schedule to sit down for a chat at Diagram's offices. For those of you that don't know Dan, he's the true definition of a serial entrepreneur. His first company was acquired in 2006 by a Fortune 500, and then he went on to start and exit another 5 tech companies. His last venture was Passwordbox, which was acquired by Intel in December 2014, which was a great Canadian story. He's a limited partner in 7 VC funds and an angel investor in more than 45 startups. So beyond just being an operator, he's also a very, very active angel investor. Since September 2017, Dan's been the managing partner of Diagram. It's a $30 million launchpad for exciting ventures in fintech and insurtech. We had a really good conversation, and it's really Dan here, where we spoke about how he got into the startup world, the story of his exits, the secret to his success, and what he really focuses on. And the quick hint here, it's all about hiring. And then a really interesting perspective on blockchain and AI. And then really just talking about his thoughts on entrepreneurship. Dan is really a world-class entrepreneur, and I'm humbled to get to know him. You will not be disappointed by this interview. Dan, thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for inviting me.
Congratulations, by the way, on the birth of your son.
Yeah, second baby.
Yeah, I'm happy you're taking time. I know you're just back from paternity leave, so appreciate you taking the time today.
That's a pleasure, actually. I love podcasts. I would love to start a podcast maybe one day. I think it's a good way to learn stuff. I'm listening to Tim Ferriss' podcast a lot, and while I'm jogging, I'm trying to optimize my time, and listening to podcasts enables you to do sports and learn at the same time.
So I'm really happy you're on, because I think the insights and your stellar track record, I think it's going to be great for people to learn as well. So
we'll see.
Don't sell yourself too short. And I guess the first question I want to ask you is, what led you to want to start your own companies? What led you to this career in serial entrepreneurship?
So that's interesting. I think it's in my blood. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. My father was an entrepreneur. And basically, since I'm really young, I want to have my own company. I don't want to have a boss. At 8 years old, I was actually, each time that there was a huge sale at Burger King, like one time a year, they were dropping the Whopper price to 29 cents. I was going there, buying a ton of Whoppers, putting there in the freezer and selling them back to my kids. People maybe don't know, but you can microwave them, and I was reselling them for $1 and it was still cheap. So, making some kind of business or transaction was something that I really enjoyed. After that, I didn't want to work with my dad. So that's actually why I created my first business at 10 or 11 years old. I started the lawn moving business just because I didn't want to go work for my dad. He was a dry cleaner, and working in a dry cleaner in the summer is like the worst thing in the world, because it's really hot already. And with the summer, it's just infernal. So, one good way to not go to work to my dad was to create my own job and create my own business. So, I first started my first business to actually escape the path of taking the work from my dad and then taking the family business, because I didn't see a bright future into dry cleaning. Actually, it's a space that was going down at that time. People started to wear jeans and things like that. So I was like, oh, and I was really intrigued by technology. I started to use internet in 94. So there was other passion.
Yeah, and other passions, I think, is a pretty good way to put it, because I think you're up to now, you had 5 successful exits. You started 5. Maybe walk us back to that first one.
So, okay, interesting. So the first one happened when the bubble burst in 2000. So a lot of people think it's bad when things bad are happening to the economy. But if you look back at 2008 or 2000, actually a lot of businesses have been started there because it's creating opportunities. A lot of people are losing their job. A lot of companies are going bankrupt. And for my case, I was working as a radio host at a Montreal radio station called Cool FM at the time. And it was funny because the website went down, and the CKOI website, which was a partner station owned by the same owner, went down as well. And I said to the owner of the radio stations, you know what, I can code, sign this paper, I'll take care of the website, and in exchange, I will actually take the advertising revenue, which were almost inexistent at that time. And the owner probably lost a lot of money in the bubble, was like, I don't want to hear about the internet anymore. He was glad he was signing the paper. It will cost him nothing to actually have websites for the radio station. And on my side, I was like, taking not a huge bet. There was not a lot of downside, but I decided to double down on making the website great. So I put a webcam in the studio, chat with the host. We were actually the first to do podcasts, RSS feed. So my radio show was rebroadcast or tape, and I was putting the MP3 file in the RSS feed after each show. And actually the website of Cool FM, the station that I was at the beginning, had more success than CKOI, which had like 3 times more listener than Cool FM. So they said, oh, why you don't do this other site since you have some success? And I was making a lot of money because we started to have a lot of unique visitors. And at that point, it was like media metrics, tracking the visitors, and eyeballs was what people were looking for. So basically, when Chorus Entertainment decided to buy Metro Media, who owns the radio station, and I was doing pretty much all the websites at a certain point, saw my contract, they were like, oh, this kid, he's doing the website with another guy and he's making XYZ amount of money. It's crazy. We should never allow that. And I said to them, you know what, look at my numbers. The Toronto radio station that you own have like half of the ratio of unique visitors on the internet versus listeners to the FM radio stations. And actually they decided to create my own company to manage the websites. And then we had the Montreal Canadian as a client and other clients, and we grew this business. And actually this business we sold in 2006 to a subsidiary of Power Corp called Jessica Digital, which is part of La Presse.
Yeah, it's a Fortune 500 company.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
the first exit, and actually it was called Generation Flash, and as soon as they bought the company, Flash was going down as a coding language. So they rebranded it as William, and the agency still exists today.
Yeah, and it's a pretty successful agency. I won't ask you about all your exit. It will take a while. Maybe look for some pattern recognition, right? Like Stream the World was another great success.
So maybe I can explain what I saw and why I decided not to do other businesses like Generation Flash. I realized that service business are tough because you need to service a lot of clients. There's no real recurring revenues, and you don't call the shots. The client called the shots at some point. And for me, it was like, I will never, and this is one of the reasons I sold, because I was like not the master of my own destiny, and I wasn't going as fast as I wanted. So I said to myself, the next business I want to create should be a business that bring recurring revenues, where the multiples also when you sell are like way higher than the service business industry. So Stream the World came as an idea that I actually had managing radio stations, because when I was reading all the emails of listeners, most of the customer support problems were like, oh, I'm not able to listen with Real Audio or Windows Media. And I said to myself, there's only one plugin that is in all computers. And at that time it was Flash, which was in, I think, 98% of computers. So if we can invent a way to stream into Flash, then we solve the whole streaming problem. And we actually patented and invented the technology. And when I first started to pitch that to VCs in Quebec, they didn't understand shit. So I had to go in California, and in California, they already had thesis about streaming. They knew audio will go online. They knew that video will go online. And they saw that we had something unique. We were the only one to stream in Flash. That's even before Adobe was streaming in Flash. They gave me a $3 million check 30 days after the first meeting. And that was incredible.
Wow.
And now it's big. Triton Digital does Spotify, the Pendo, and a bunch of... And I think they still have something like 100 employees in Montreal. So it's based in California, but we still have people here. And I'm proud of that, to have created jobs that are around.
That are still, it must be pretty cool, right? Like I don't want to say your children, but your other children, let's say you've started, they're still around, they're still active, they're still people. What leads you to decide to start a new project? And we're going to get to diagram in a little bit, but is it a rational process where you're like, you take an Excel sheet, you do the math, you use like a 2x2 grid, or is it more of an emotional or intuitive? You're like, I see an opportunity, I feel it, and you jump in, or is it a mix of both?
So I think as humans, we evolve throughout our life, and I was really opportunistic at first. So I saw the website going down, and I said to my boss, "Oh, can I take care of the website?" But now it's more like, okay, what do I really want to achieve, and what is the positive impact this can have on people? Because at the end of the day, what I would like to do is to leave the world a bit better than when I entered. So right now I'm much more driven by impact projects. And the reason I decided to team up with Diagram is that I think it's the only place in Canada where we are backed by $1 billion or even trillion under asset company. And we can actually build giants that are based here in Montreal or in Toronto that can go globally, because they have the backing, or they have the foundations to finance us throughout the way, and they also have the right model for the entrepreneurs, where we give the majority of the equity of the companies to the founders, which is, as a CEO in the past, I will have considered as a good deal. Actually, if the founders or if I was offered an opportunity to join something without the founders having control, I wouldn't join, because it's not your company. So I think it's a great deal, and I think finance is the next thing to be disrupted in insurance as well. And with everything that's going on, we don't know when exactly, but the banks that and the insurance company that are going to be disrupted, and I would like to bring to the people some better insurance and financial companies, because I think right now there's a lot of gains that can be made by the consumers. They are not served super well, plus they pay really high fee, and one reason for that is the technology that drives all that is not optimal at the time.
So is your personal motivation, you went from starting your own company, selling it, having a big impact, moving on to the next project. You saw an opportunity to say, okay, hey, can I do this at scale? Can I have multiple projects that I'm involved in?
So that's interesting, because what drives my decision to not be a CEO, and that's a conscious decision, because I've been fighting with myself not to become a CEO again, is having balance. I have now 2 kids, and I don't see how you can be... And we can have a longer conversation on that, but I don't see how you can manage to have like 2 kids under 2 years old and do a good job as a dad plus a CEO. And in a startup, maybe in a bigger company when things are like well structured, but creating a startup, like Andreessen said, it's like assembling a parachute while you're going down. And
when you're jumped off the plane.
You already jumped off the plane. So if you need to assemble the parachute and if you need to change diapers at the same time, it's something that I think wouldn't make sense, and I knew I will need to sacrifice one or the other. And when you are a CEO of a startup, you also act as a role model. So if you work less, people will work less. If you don't consider that as your number one priority, people won't consider it as your number one priority, at least in my mind. So for me, it's really a question of balance. Mm-hmm.
Well, one question I've always meant to ask you, like you've spoken a lot about this subject, right, of what it takes to have a successful project, right? And you mentioned, your past track record as CEO. You've spoken about hiring, selling outside of Quebec, product focus. But what do you think was the key skill for you personally to build these successful companies?
So my key skill, and I think it's probably the only thing I'm good at, it's putting the right people together, actually assembling the best team. All the businesses I created and the success that I had came from the team and not from me. And what I'm really good at is convincing people that they should leave everything and join me to build that crazy idea. And yes, this is. I don't consider myself super smart, but I'm smart at finding people smarter than me, and I think I'm really good at that. So I think that's my key.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I like the fact of hiring people smarter than you. I kind of see it sometimes in my job where it's like you have these people and you're like, why are they here? They're like way smarter than me and could be doing something else, right? I think that's a hugely motivating factor, like you said, and like if you need those people to be able to drive forward. I want to jump back now to diagram because I find it obviously super interesting what you guys are doing in the finance space. How would you describe the opportunity? How big is the opportunity, and how early are we in the shift of how, if I call it, let's say, digitization of financial services or a greater focus on the customer?
Let me try to break down the question because I think there's many questions there. Let's talk about crypto because I'm really interested in the space, and I invested in Bitcoin, I think in 2013, and now I have multiple coins, and I'm a big EOS supporter and let's say passionate. And what I'm seeing, it's like things are it's like internet in the 90s. We don't really know what's the technology that's going to cut it. We don't really know what are the companies that are going to make it, but there's a change coming. And one of the things that I'm seeing in blockchain and cryptos, it's the fact that we now can create a different kind of economy, meaning the blockchain allows us to go from a society where shareholders get wealth from investing in companies to all stakeholders that are using a product, let's say Facebook, who actually own a piece of the company depending on their contribution.
So you're referring to the tokenization element? The
tokenization, and I think that the technology allows you to do things that would, if done like traditionally, will be too costly to manage. Let's say you want to actually give stocks to everyone that use Uber. That will be pretty complex to do with the NASDAQ and open like an account at E-Trade for every guy that entered the taxi. But with tokenization, every rider or every client to Uber can start to receive a piece of their contribution to the company by getting a token, and this token can be distributed like easily on an app or so. I think financially, what we're going to see is hopefully, I think it's going to be for the greater good. But I think that the technology can change the way capitalism is. And that's in my mind, the biggest shift that can happen. Would it happen? I don't know. But I definitely think that technology wise now we're at the third wave of crypto, where Bitcoin was the first, Ether the second, and now we're looking at Neo and EOS as the third, and the technology seems way stronger for those type of change. And ultimately, I think the consumer will benefit from the blockchain and the crypto, because at the end of the day, all the back office and the paperwork and the humans that are actually costing a lot are not going to be there. What's dangerous, though, it's humans are going to be replaced by technology, by blockchain, which allow people to track everything with AI. And AI, it's actually something that scares me, because not only it's going to replace people, it's also going to be taxed differently. Meaning, if tomorrow all the transaction and all the people that handle, let's say, stuff at banks are replaced with AI, and the AI is controlled by a company in California that offers this technology to banks, we're going to lose the job of thousands of people that were paying tax. And a company in the States, for example, will get the gain,
will benefit,
and will pay tax elsewhere and then maybe even the States, because they have those companies have structures to pay less tax. So we lose job, and I think what people are not conscious is not the job that we're losing, it's also the revenues. Because if we're losing job, we can still start to do like guaranteed income to everyone. There are some experiments that are going in some countries right now, where people get a certain amount guaranteed per month.
Minimum revenue, basically.
Minimum revenue, yeah. They call it universal income, I think.
Universal basic income, yeah.
Yeah. And if you're looking at it, the jobs won't be there, so there's no taxpayers, and if there's no taxpayers, there's no way the government will be able to pay to re-educate those people or give them universal basic income. So that's something that I fear, but I'm happy that in Montreal we have Element AI. I'm an investor in Element AI, and invested in the first seed round that they had, and I think their goal is actually to do a counterbalance to Google and Facebook, who can maybe dominate AI, and hopefully in Montreal we'll have more of that, since we have the talent to execute. So
yeah.
But it's not about the talent. What scares me, it's about where is that going to be taxed, and where the job loss are, and which revenues are we going to replace those jobs that are going to be elsewhere.
Yeah, it's tough to predict. Like, I think about this as well, right? Like, a lot of jobs will be displaced. Like, you think of like self-driving cars as kind of the classic example of, all the truck drivers and all the taxi drivers, right? But it's going to go deeper, right? All the paralegals, for instance, right? Like, we work with a legal tech startup where it's going to make basically the job of a paralegal kind of, irrelevant. So it's a lot of white collar jobs as well, not just like blue collar factory jobs.
I think people, but so I come back to my point. I think we're going to face that anyway. But what scares me even more than that, it's okay. So the wealth will go elsewhere. It will go, instead of going to individual, it's going to go to a company that does AI. So should we tax robots? Should we tax AI? Because at the end of the day, those people will need to find a way to get income, whether it's by going back to school, but who's going to pay for the school, or with universal basic income. So, and I actually think that AI will become also something important, not only for jobs, but for countries. So maybe the next war is not like the war with missile. Maybe the next war is the war to win AI, because the country who's going to be able to get the best AI is going to be able to actually
dominate other countries.
Get the more revenue if the revenues are taxed in this country. And because AI, it's something that is not physical, so it can replace job all over the world. And I will say that Chinese have a big advantage because they have more data than everyone else, so they just need the AI part. Where us, we need the AI and the data part. And I'm really happy that we have a lot of privacy policy, but they don't have that in China, and that makes data even more available. And by having this data even more available, it also means that maybe their AI is going to be more powerful, and maybe they're going to get the best at AI just by getting this data, even if it's not like the best practice, and dominate the world with their technology.
Yeah, by scale. Okay, we're going to go deep down the rabbit hole here, because you touched upon a few interesting subjects. Like, war's one that I think about. Like, you see the current situation that's in the Middle East, and it's really because we're in the kind of this purgatory. We're between the industrial age, right? So like we're at the tail end of where natural resources are important. So like oil, obviously it's kind of hit its peak and now it's declining, but we're seeing the last big pockets of it is where the conflict's happening. Yeah. So where will the next likely zones of conflict occur, right? And you brought up a really good point, and everyone's kind of pointing at this whole China thing as a potential.
That can be done. It can be cybersecurity. I think people have a lot of trust in on the internet and on institutions, but and I'm not an expert at that, but the day that quantum computers will be able to decrypt everything, I think everything will be at risk, and then people might run to the bank, and if people start to run to the bank don't hold the funds of everyone, so I think bank can close down. So cybersecurity can actually be another big threat to the economy or to a country. So it can be, so next war can be AI, can be cybersecurity, it can be, but I think the government are not super aware of all that.
No, they're not ready at all.
They're still investing a lot of money in missiles and planes and things like that, where if you make all the Canadian banks close down because you hack them and you transfer funds elsewhere and whatever, you find to make people insecure about their bank, then people run to bank, and then the financial system is done. So.
Yeah, you mentioned AI and blockchain as areas that you're spending time on. It sounds like you're obviously investing in those spaces. What do you think is happening in the industry that's not capturing enough attention, or that's misunderstood?
But I definitely think cryptos right now are not delivering a lot of value. So it's speculation, and I think they have too much attention, because if it weren't from speculators, people wouldn't talk about Bitcoin, because there's not a lot of case of use of Bitcoin in real life. So I think that's, to answer your question differently, that has too much attention. Where I think there's a need for more attention, it's with what happened with AI, especially when it comes to predictions. So AI can handle much more variables than a human can, and can be way better than humans at predicting things, and predicting things when it comes to investment, when it comes to the market and the financial system. Is something that can give you an edge. So, and people that actually invested in the hedge fund that gives a great return based on AI, and I'm like, okay, there's not much people aware of that fund. And secondly, even if people were aware of that fund, it's a black box. The scientific that did the magic are actually not talking about the magic. So I think there's a lot of that is going on in the background that people don't see. So yeah, I would say AI. We don't talk enough about AI. We talk too much about crypto and blockchain. It's linked to crypto, but I think it's more about real application. So show me transactions, show me people using it, because right now, if I'm looking at it, the only real good use of blockchain, it's Teemit, which is a network where people post content and everyone that contributes get some kind of incentive. And Everypedia, who starts to disrupt Wikipedia by doing some kind of redistribution of wealth to people that contribute. But other than that, it's like there's nothing real. So I'm still waiting to see real deployment of stuff. And I invested in, I think, 10 crypto businesses, and the ones that are the most successful are not in North America. Invested in BitPesa in Africa, BitPagos in Argentina. And I think those people need crypto much more than us, because their currency is fluctuating way more than us. Yeah. And the fees to transfer money to Africa, for example, are just astronomical. So, we need more use case. We need some proof point that it brings real value to people. And we need to have less hype.
Yeah. You said it pretty well. Like right now, for instance, North Americans are overbanked, in terms of services, but in other areas, not enough, right? So that's where I think we're going to start seeing some of these really initial use cases.
Yeah. And underbank is one of the places where I see it's going to pay off, because there's, I think, 2 billion underbank in the world. And for a bank to actually service those people, it would have been too costly. And second, people didn't have a phone 2, 3, 5 years ago, and now there's a huge penetration of smartphone that enables people to, if you're looking at Kenya, for example, what they're doing with M-Pesa is just incredible. People buy coffee with their phone and with coins that are not issued by the government. So I think there's a big paradigm shift where everyone, and there's a $4 phone. I don't know if you know, in India, they launched a smartphone that costs only $4.
Oh, wow. $4. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah.
And I think this is going to democratize a smartphone for almost everyone. But so I think the big shifts are that are going to drive the underbank situation, and will solve it, are the growth in smartphone penetration, the blanketing in internet. So Facebook, Google have projects to blanket the planet with internet. So internet will be everywhere for almost free. And the third thing is probably the blockchain and AI. So the blockchain will enable someone to give some kind of bank account to someone who just want to deposit 50 cents in it. Just because the technology is not costly, so it's gonna and it's gonna be automatized, so it's not gonna require human people. And the big shift also, it's in identity. If you want to bank the underbanked, they need to have some kind of way to be recognized, and with biometrics and with new way technology are using to identify someone. It will allow everyone to have an identity, even if you don't have a passport, even if you don't have, let's say, a driver's license. And for us in North America, we're it's far from our head, but for people that don't have banking, it's something that is really interesting. And the blockchain will also allow people to get credit, because in a lot of countries, you buy a home and the bank don't want to finance you because your title are not maybe there's 5 people that own the same home, And now the blockchain in Africa and in other places are starting to be the ledger to actually keep the records of who owns what, and it cannot be like falsified. And so I think there's a lot of good things that are going to happen, but things are moving slowly. But at a certain point, what we saw with the internet, it's there's always a curve with the early adopters, and I think when the adoption will kick in, it's going to be interesting.
It's going to be fast.
And right now we're not there yet. And this is an interesting moment to actually be an entrepreneur, because we're just at the beginning of the curve. And there's many things you can build based on those technology that will help you catch the wave.
Yeah. What advice would you give to an entrepreneur today starting a business in Montreal or Canada?
But it depends on, so one advice I will give entrepreneurs is try to figure out why you're creating a business first, because I think what you need to find out first is, are you willing to sacrifice stuff and go the VC path and fast growing path, or you just want a lifestyle business? And those are two different paths. And I think you need to ask this question first. The second question is, what are you passionate about? It's so tough to build a business that if you're not passionate about something, it's going to be too tough. And you're just going to, at some point, decide to, not put any more work in it because it's too difficult. So it needs to be something that you're passionate about. And the third, it needs to be in the right timing. There's some studies that have shown that even if you have the best team and you execute super well, timing is key. So timing is something that you can not control, but you can actually try to anticipate. And what I would say is timing is good right now for certain area. I think fintech, we're at the end of the timing. There's a lot of things that are happening right now, and a lot of people invest in money and now they won't return. But insurance is something that's going to be disrupted, and that's still early, and there's a lot of money that will be invested, and there's not a lot of competition right now. So I think that you need to be like at the right stage in the wave. And normally when the VC already made all those bets into a space, let's say the crypto space, I think the bets were made like 2-3 years ago, even 4 years ago. So I think it's late to do a crypto business, but it's not late to do a blockchain based technology business or a tokenized based business. But launching a Coinbase today wouldn't make sense according to what I see.
Yeah. Last question would be is, where can people find out more about yourself or about what you're doing with Diagram?
So I'm pretty discreet. I don't have a blog. Hopefully one day I'll start one. Focus on my family, but people can go to danrobichaud.com. It's danrobichaud.com for the English-speaking people.
I'll link to it in the show notes.
And they can contact me there. And we're looking at Diagram for good funders. So if you are really good at something, please drop me an email, and I'm gonna definitely look at it. And we're looking also for a good idea to disrupt the financial and insurance industry. So that's what I'm looking for. And thanks for doing that. I find it interesting, and I'm gonna start replacing Tim Ferriss by your podcast while I'm running.
I've got a ways to go, but thanks, Dan. All right, have a good one.
Thank you for listening to the Point of No Return podcast. Never miss an episode by clicking on the subscribe button on iTunes or Google Play.